Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, she, he, and this is Literally Graphic. And today we are going to talk about my reading plans for November 2022. I know it's cliche, but wow, does this year feel like it's flown by. Reflecting on last month's TBR that I released before my annual September break, I definitely took on way too much. I also got my first copyright strike, which resolved in my favor, but took a huge bite out of my motivation at the start of October. And now we turn the final corner of October. Despite my best efforts, I've ended up pretty sick on and off for most of the month. But it's super hard to pull back. That said, I'm going to try and do a little bit of that by nixing my obligation to review a translated comic every other Thursday. This isn't to say I'll never review translated comics, but that it will fold into the rest of my schedule. I'm also going to try and resist filling that extra space with even more Thursday non-review videos. But we shall see. This is still a very interesting, fun, and fulfilling hobby. There aren't many things in my life that I've managed to be this consistent about for this long, so I'm remaining pretty proud of whatever this is. Lol. Final October note. Initially I was going to do another half-series review of Full Metal Alchemist like I did for Fruits Basket, and I have actually read that much. But we are quickly running out of days in the month, so I think I'm just going to push that forward and still try and finish the entire series before I start working out my thoughts on it. But let's get to the meat. What am I actually going to read? Hopefully this month. First off, I am running the final corner on my second A to Z of queer comic books lit TBR this month. First off, we have Shadow Life by Hiromi Goto and Anne Zhu, published by First Second in 2021. It is 368 pages long. Keywords on Goodreads are LGBT, fantasy, magical realism, adult, and Canada. Shadow Life is summarized as, quote, 2022 Asian Pacific American Literature Award winner for adult fiction and 2022 LA Times Book Prize finalist. Poet and novelist Hiromi Goto effortlessly blends wry, observational, slice-of-life literary fiction with poetic, magical realism in the tender and surprising graphic novel Shadow Life, with haunting art from debut artist Anne Zhu. When Kumiko's well-meaning adult daughters place her in an assisted living home, the 76-year-old widow gives it a try, but it's not where she wants to be. She goes on the lam and finds a cozy bachelor apartment, keeping the location secret even while communicating online with her eldest daughter. Kumiko revels in the small daily pleasures, decorating as she pleases, eating what she wants, and swimming in the community pool. But something has followed her from her former residence. Death's shadow. Kumiko's sweet life is shattered when Death's shadow swoops in to collect her. With her quick mind and sense of humor, Kumiko, with the help of friends new and old, is prepared for the fight of her life. But how long can an old woman thwart fate? End quote. And the final review for this round of the A to Z list is a book entitled The Yellow Jar, Two Tales from Japanese Tradition by gay creator Patrick Atangan. Published by Nantir Bial Manushtein Publishing. It is 48 pages long. Keywords on Goodreads are Japan and young adult. The summary on WorldCat is, quote, The Yellow Jar, the greedy but devoted Nikotoshi seeks to rescue his estranged wife from the demon warrior Hoso no Kami. Two chrysanthemum maidens. Two blossom sisters are at first mistaken for weeds, but after they flower, they are separated and become lonely for each other's company. End quote. Looking at my black comic TBR, that was one of the bikes I fell off this past month. So once again, I'm going to try and pick up the fourth collected edition of Christopher Priest's run on Black Panther, published by Marvel. It is 416 pages long. Keywords on Goodreads are Marvel, superheroes, crime, and noir. And the summary is, quote, Christopher Priest takes the Black Panther in a whole different direction. With T'Challa gone, who will inherit the mantle? Could it be the guy with the trench coat and guns? Kevin Casper Cole is seeking revenge on the people who hurt his family, and it will bring him into conflict with corrupt New York policemen as well as a brutal hunter. It's the all-new Black Panther versus the White Wolf as a crime novel in superhero comics form begins. But nothing in a Priest tale is ever black and white, end quote. This would also mark the end of my fourth Black Comics TBR, which is also pretty cool. Look forward to a fifth Black Creators TBR on the horizon. Manga-wise, I am actually only planning on getting to one manga this month, and that is Talk to My Back, which I didn't get to in October, not only because of all the things I already outlined, but also because the whole list was super long at my library. But I have it in my hands now, so I'm going to try and read it now and talk about it only a week late in November. Talk to My Back was written and published by Yamada, Murasaki, and translated by Ryan Holberg. Published in English by Drawn and Quarterly in 2022, it is 384 pages long. Although the comic itself is not particularly text-heavy, as per usual with Drawn and Quarterly, there is also a 32-page write-up about the mangaka in the back. So we shall see. Keywords over on Anime Planet are drama, seinen, slice of life, family life, married life, and infidelity. And the summary on Goodreads is, quote, set in an apartment complex on the outskirts of Tokyo, Talk to My Back, remove dates, explores the fraying of Japanese suburban middle-class dreams through a woman's relationship with her two daughters as they mature and assert their independence, and with her husband, who works late and sees his wife as little more than a domestic servant. While engaging frankly with the compromises of marriage and motherhood, Yamada remains generous with the characters who fetter her protagonists. When her husband has an affair, Chiharu feels that she too has broken the marital contract by straying from the template of the happy housewife. Yamada saves her harshest criticisms for society at large, particularly its false promises of eternal satisfaction within the nuclear family, as fears of having been thrown away inside that empty vessel called the household gnaw at Chiharu's soul. Yamada was the first cartoonist in Japan to use the expressive freedoms of alt manga to address domesticity and womanhood in a realistic, critical, and sustained way. A watershed work of literary manga, Talk to My Back was serialized in the influential magazine Garo in the early 1980s and is translated by Eisner-nominated Ryan Holberg. End quote. Coming to what might be the conclusion, at least for now, of my reading comics about abortion, this month I am hoping to get to Comics for Choice, illustrated abortion stories, history, and politics. Various creators. This anthology was published by Open Source Publishing in 2017 and is 300 pages long. Keywords on Goodreads include nonfiction, feminism, history, adult, politics, and LGBT. The summary is, quote, Comics for Choice is an anthology of comics about abortion. As this fundamental reproductive right continues to be stigmatized and jeopardized, over 60 artists and writers have created comics that boldly share their own experiences and educate readers on the history of abortion, current political struggles, activism, and more. Lawyers, activists, medical professionals, historians, and abortion fund volunteers have teamed up with cartoonists and illustrators to share their knowledge in accessible comics form. End quote. Looking at the realm of comics reading schedule, what I have next on my TBR is Locke and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. To keep with the theme of not pushing myself too hard, we're going with only an initial thoughts review, so Volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft, was published by IDW in 2008, I believe. It is 168 pages long, and expect me to shit-talk Lovecraft at least a little bit. Keywords on Goodreads are fantasy, mystery, paranormal, and supernatural. And the summary is, quote, Locke and Key tells of Key House, an unlikely New England mansion with fantastic doors that transform all who dare to walk through them, home to a hate-filled and relentless creature that will not rest until it forces open the most terrible door of them all. End quote. In a similar vein, my Vertigo read-through continues, but I finally get to pick up a new series. In November, I'm going to start a volume-by-volume read-through of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore et al. Yes, another Moore title, which I'm not super thrilled about, but I bought this series ages ago and I've never finished it, so it just seemed like time. Published by DC's Vertigo imprint, the comic originally started in 1983, and this first volume bind-up is 173 pages long. Keywords are superheroes, horror, and fantasy. Summary is, quote, before Watchmen, Alan Moore made his debut in the U.S. comic book industry with the revitalization of the horror comic book The Swamp Thing. His deconstruction of the classic monster stretched the creative boundaries of the medium and became one of the most spectacular series in comic book history. With modern-day issues explored against the backdrop of horror, Swamp Thing stories became commentaries on environmental, political, and social issues, unflinching in their relevance. Saga of the Swamp Thing Book 1 collects issues number 20 through 27 of this seminal series, including the never-before reprinted Saga of the Swamp Thing Number 20, where Moore takes over as writer and concludes the previous storyline. Book 1 begins with the story, The Anatomy Lesson, a haunting origin story that reshapes Swamp Thing mythology with terrifying revelations that begin a journey of discovery and adventure that will take him across the stars and beyond. End quote. And last but certainly not least, for my anti-ableism TBR, I will be reading Marvel's Mania, Depression, Michelangelo, and Me by Ellen Forney. I have read this book before, but the review is no longer live, although my review of the sequel is and should be linked in the cards. Published by Avery in 2012, it is 256 pages long. Keywords are memoir, mental health, queer, and psychology. Summary is, quote, cartoonist Ellen Forney explores the relationship between crazy and creative in this graphic memoir of her bipolar disorder, woven with stories of famous bipolar artists and writers. Shortly before her 30th birthday, Forney was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, flagrantly manic and terrified that medications would cause her to lose creativity. She began a years-long struggle to find mental stability while retaining her passions and creativity. Searching to make sense of the popular concept of the crazy artist, she finds inspiration from the lives and work of other artists and writers who suffered from mood disorders, including Vincent van Gogh, Georgia O'Keeffe, William Styron, and Sylvia Plath. She also researches the clinical aspects of bipolar disorder, including the strengths and limitations of various treatments and medications, and what studies tell us about the conundrum of attempting to cure an otherwise brilliant mind. Darkly funny and intensely personal, Forney's memoir provides a visceral glimpse into the effects of a mood disorder on an artist's work, as she shares her own story through bold black and white images and evocative prose, end quote. And that's all they wrote. Let me know if any of these books sounds particularly interesting to you, and share what you'll be reading this month down in the comments if you desire. In binge watching the original Fullmetal Alchemist anime and the Sandman show on Netflix for their respective reviews, I have fallen behind on watching YouTube videos, but no longer. It is a new month, so I shall turn over a new leaf. Or returning leaf, or something. I fear I will probably never be great at keeping up with your lovely comments, but I do appreciate them. Bye y'all, keep reading and organize to end capitalist depression. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, non-Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.